Hi, today I'm going to explain what I call a mental verb map. So a verb map is used when you're speaking or even writing in a foreign language spontaneously, and it allows you to access the different conjugations of any verb in a more efficient, fast, and organized manner. So instead of fumbling around in your memory to find the correct way to conjugate a verb in a given tense or mood, this verb map allows you to organize all the conjugations and all the tenses you know, so that when you have to produce them spontaneously, you know where to look in this map inside your head. So before I start explaining, I have to mention that this concept of a verb map is really only applicable to languages with many conjugations in many tenses and in possibly many moods. So that would be all the Romance languages, like Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, and really any other language that has multiple tenses. It wouldn't be applicable for something like Chinese, which doesn't really have verb conjugations. So that's just so you know where this concept is applicable. Also, I have to mention that this idea is mainly for intermediate to advanced language learners who have already covered all the conjugations of all verbs in all tenses and all moods. So you can only have a complete verb map if you know everything about verbs. So that's why it's for intermediate to advanced learners. Also, I should mention that this concept is not really emphasized in schools. It may be something that they just expect you to pick up or develop naturally, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. So this is a way to reinforce this idea of a verb map inside your head so that it's easier when you speak and write spontaneously. So here I'll explain this verb map that I have. It just so happens that this specific verb map that I wrote is in the format that is used for Spanish, although it can be modified to any other Romance language with a few little tweaks. So it's organized into 4 columns. First 2 columns are moods, the indicative and the subjunctive mood. Also, I should mention that I'm not going to explain what these words mean, mood, indicative, subjunctive, because it's assumed knowledge that you've already learnt and understood all these concepts surrounding verbs and their conjugations in different tenses. So I'm not going to explain what those words mean. So first 2 columns, indicative column, subjunctive column. Then you have the imperative column, which are the commands, and then the last one is other, which includes different forms of the verbs, like the participles, which are not tenses by themselves. So in the first 2 columns, these are where you're going to conjugate the verbs mainly. So the rows are organized by the different tenses. So Spanish has 10 tenses in the indicative mood, present, simple past, future, etc. And within each of those tenses, you have the conjugation chart, which is this little green chart which I've expanded here. So this chart comprises the different conjugations for any verb in a given tense. So say you have the infinitive of a verb up here, and basically how the chart is organized is each space in the chart is a different space for a different conjugation. So this upper left space is the conjugation for the first person singular. Oh, sorry, I missed writing. So this upper left space is for the singular first person conjugation, that's the I form. Then this space is the second person singular, which is the you form. Then here is the third person, he, she, it. Up here is first person plural, which is we, because the plural of I is we. Second person plural, which is you all. Third person plural, which is they. So just to give you an example, in Spanish it would be yo, tú, él, ella. Often usted is included in here because it follows the same conjugation. Nosotros, vosotros, and then here ella, ellas, ellos, ellas. And ustedes is also included here, even though it's not third person, but it follows the same conjugation pattern. In French, it's je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, and il, elle, plural. So this is the conjugation chart. In English, real quick, I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. So that's the chart that goes in every single one of these spaces within the chart, within the verb map. So here in English, say we have the verb to be. In this chart you would see I am, you are, he is, we are, you are, they are. In Spanish, yo soy, tú eres, él es, nosotros somos, vosotros, or ustedes, and then ellos, ellas, son. So then it just continues on through all the tenses. So Spanish happens to have 10 tenses here. French may have more or less. Other languages may have more or less. But basically, you just cover all the tenses that you find in this indicative column, in this indicative mood in this one column. Then, also another thing to mention about the organization of the tenses is, again, this is something that may be more suited towards Spanish or other Romance languages, but how I've organized these is, first you have the normal tenses, then you have the perfect tenses, which use an auxiliary verb. In Spanish is haber, French is avoir. So the first 5 are perfect tenses, right? Are normal tenses. I'm not sure the actual name. And then these 5 are the perfect tense equivalent of these 5, right? So here you have the present, and then here you have the present perfect. Here you have the simple past or the preterite. Here you have the past perfect. Here you have the future, future perfect. Conditional, conditional perfect. And then imperfect. And then it's not called imperfect perfect, it's called a pluperfect. So those are all the tenses in Spanish, and you can see I've organized it with the normal tenses and then the perfect tenses. And then, in the next column, the subjunctive. Subjunctive in Spanish has fewer tenses than in indicative. So I've just drawn an arrow for those tenses that carry over into the subjunctive mood. So the present carries over because there exists a present subjunctive in Spanish. Future carries over. Future subjunctive is rarely used and is rarely taught in schools. Just mentioning that. Imperfect carries over. Present perfect, future perfect, pluperfect. They all carry over into the subjunctive. Then here you have the imperative tense. The imperative mood. It really only has 4 conjugations that I can think of, or in Spanish it only has 4. You have the singular informal, which would be like the tu command. For example, with the verb hacer, to do, is to has, to do. And then the singular formal, which is the usted form, so it would be haga. Plural informal, which would be the vosotros form. And then the plural formal, which would be the ellos, ellas, ellos, ellas, ustedes form. So that's the imperative mood. Notice it doesn't follow all these tenses. It only has 4 forms. French has less. French does not differentiate between the plural formal and plural informal. So it only has 3. Oh, so no, sorry. Oh yeah, it doesn't. It actually doesn't differentiate between these 3. Singular formal is vous. Plural informal is also vous, and plural formal is also vous. So all of those are the same. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I made a mistake before. I said plural formal is ellos, ellas. It's not. It's just ustedes. And then in this last column, you have the participle. So the past participle in English is the form of the verb that ends in ed usually, or basically it's the form that you use with the perfect tenses. So you say I have read. So read I have read this book, so read is the past participle. And then you have the present participle, which is the gerund, which is the ing form, like I am reading. So that's used in Spanish with the present progressive tense, estoy leyendo. But leyendo by itself is not, it's not part of any tense. So, and by the way, this chart is not part of the actual verb map. I just wanted to explain what the chart meant in more detail. So, this is really the whole verb map for Spanish, and really for any Romance language. The order of these tenses can be changed for convenience and for better organization. Like in Spanish, I think this is a good organization because all these are really like some of the most frequently used tenses. The first 5: present, preterite, and then future conditional imperfect. Those are all really common tenses in Spanish. However, in French, the simple past is not really used, so you may want to put that lower on the list or something, or you could just say that the simple past is the same as the present perfect if you don't want to learn the simple past of French. I don't know. So the order is changeable, but really this is just a way to organize the verb conjugations in your mind, so that when you want to say something like, oh, yesterday I went to the store. Oh, so this should be the thought process when you're trying to say something like that. So yesterday I went. So you know it's simple past. So you already know you're in this column. You know it's indicative because it's not a sentence that requires subjunctive. So you know you're in this chart. Then yesterday I went. So you know that's first person singular. So it's upper left. Boom. That's your conjugation. So when you're filling out this map, you should have yo fui or je suis allé, something like that, right here in this box in the verb, or in the chart, or another sentence. So say in Spanish you have the sentence, I told him to do his homework. So in Spanish that's le dije que hiciera su tarea. So, well, you have two verbs conjugated there. I told him to do his homework, but let's just focus on the to-do part. Or we can do both, actually. Let's do both. So yesterday I told him. So that's, again, simple past, indicative, first person. So you should have, it's kind of like a coordinate grid. You should have like some sort of locating device. I don't want to say device, but you should be able to locate that position on the chart, on the map. So I told him, simple past, indicative, first person, le dije, to do his homework. So that requires subjunctive, and it's imperfect subjunctive, and it is third person. So you should automatically go second column, imperfect row, third person. So that conjugation takes this spot on the verb chart. So it's hiciera, right? So that's how you should think of it. That should be your thought process when conjugating a verb spontaneously. Which column, which row, which spot. So in that case, with the hiciera, it was subjunctive column, imperfect row, third person singular spot. So right away it's right there on the chart. So this is a good visual tool to have, because otherwise, if you didn't have this, you would kind of be just confused about which tense to use maybe, or what the conjugations of those tenses are. With this chart, it allows you to see the pattern of tenses. Like here I mentioned normal tenses, the perfect equivalent, like the present perfect, past perfect, and then it allows you to see the pattern of which tenses carry over from indicative to subjunctive. So this visual approach is better because it exposes you to the patterns that you will find, and it's definitely a memory aid also because of the patterns thing, and it's a more organized way of accessing those conjugations. So this is the verb, this is the